Villains exist in the shadows of our ideals, the things we deem bad or detrimental to society, the dark parts of humanity we know we must reject. Carnage, Magneto, the Joker, Lex Luthor, Voldemort, Darth Vader, even generic monsters from the myths and legends, werewolves, vampires, ghouls, and demons, all personifications of their creator's shadow, as Jung defined it. Carnage is a serial killer given power via homicidal symbiote to be a greater threat. Magneto is a militant activist seeking violent means to end the tyranny against his people. Joker has been depicted many ways, but he's always the antithesis of his respective Gotham. Lex Luthor is ego. Superman's existence is seen as an unattainable status. More recent incarnations are even personifications of this corruption of great wealth, sometimes juxtaposed against Bruce Wayne's benevolence. Voldemort is a reaction to bigotry. Ironic, but we'll get there. Darth Vader was Lucas' idea of a big bad fascist, as he loosely modeled the original movie on the Vietnam War. Monsters in folklore too reflect our fears and prejudices. Werewolves likely come from the vilification of earlier pagan practices. Vampires and ghouls, before modern interpretations, were undead of various kinds, feeding off the living. A fear of the unknown, and possibly a lack of reverence for the dead, due to declining religious practices in favor of monotheistic vilification of pagan things. So what does it mean? Why is it relevant to the Agritaean Party and the greater labor movement? Well, the history and modern individualism. First, history. The word villain comes from the Roman villa, hence this seemingly useless A. Essentially, the Roman ownership class thought the working class was inherently bad, a sentiment we still see today. The first hierarchies in history gave birth to the first justifications, justifying the elitist blue bloods feeling superior to the people who kept them alive, justifying the treatment of their servants as though people who work for a living are beneath people that sit around and leech off of our labors. I mean, a leech doesn't want to feel like a leech. They want to feel like kings, senators, and CEOs. The need to feel good about hoarding wealth and gatekeeping their resources. You need to believe that you're creating jobs that help people, and that manufactured desperation is necessary because the poors are stupid, and their lack of education must be inherent and not in any way associated with the high cost of education or corrupt college admin increasing their own resources and income rather than helping teachers or quality of education. Nope, definitely none of that. Just the poors are dumb, and they're fat, and have bad teeth because something poors are bad, and definitely not because of the ownership class requiring long hours and low wages, forcing the working class to need overtime to survive, thus forcing no time for we, the working class, to care for ourselves or go to the gym. And all medical care is behind a paywall, and dental insurance is behind a separate paywall, because some rich jackasses back in the day decided dental care, something that requires a medical degree, is an art. Because, I don't know, sculpting dentures, I guess. Definitely none of that. The poors are just ugly, and beauty is reserved for people that can afford it. You get the point. This is why when I say villain, or vilification, I'm referring to this specific mentality, modern individualism. This has to do more with how we see these villains and why. Modern discourse often weaponizes individual liberties to take away individual liberties. Essentially, it's doublespeak. Things like, unions just want to take your money, when in reality, they have a union due, but you make more money and you get more benefits. Your boss makes less and now has rules to follow based on unified bargaining. It makes their job harder only because you have more rights, but it's easier for the owners to just tell you they want your money. Or how a national healthcare system would increase taxes, but it's actually less money out of your check. Age and happenstance means we'll all need healthcare eventually. So, if we spread the burden like a bed of nails versus sitting on a spike, national healthcare would also save small businesses money, as they wouldn't have to pay for employee insurance. But the ownership class doesn't want a small tax increase when they can make billions off of our fear of death and inability to work. Cuddy from House doesn't exist. They're all Kelso from Scrubs, but it's easier to make money when the working class believes the lies. Which brings me to my reason for this video. Why are villains gaining popularity? Gone are the days of Dudley Do-Right. Now we idealize Snidely Whiplash. Quite simply, the defiance of the status quo. The systems around us, the bureaucracies, they see us as numbers. You're not a person, you're a statistic. You don't have a sapient mind or personal autonomy. You're a serial number on a datasheet. Nobody cares about you because that's the system we live in. The more on the fringes of society you are, the more you identify with villains. We see this with anti-heroes as well. Wolverine, Deadpool, Lobo, Punisher, that dude from Die Hard. These characters are cathartic. Carnage is mentally ill, and serial killers always have terrible upbringings with far-right trappings. Yes, always. Even Bundy had a disturbing start. His mother was his sister, and his grandparents were his parents. He never knew his father, and he never felt like part of the family when his young mother married. Bundy was also part of at least 2 Republican organizations. Ed Gein had an overbearing Christian mother, and possibly undiagnosed autism. And Dahmer had loveless parents, a mother with depression, and a workaholic father. This doesn't justify their actions, but it shows that people aren't born evil. Hurt people, and self-care and caring for others is important, especially teaching these things in formative years. The reality is, most criminals have untreated and unrecognized trauma, and our criminal justice system does little to help, because corporate interests are paid for bodies in beds. This also helps fuel bad laws designed to make money for the states, counties, cities, and private interests. Again, the ruling owners of everything, limiting your freedoms in favor of the almighty dollar. Magneto is fairly obvious. He's a Jewish Holocaust survivor whose fear motivates him to protect his people. So, he focuses on mutant supremacy, becoming the thing he feared because he's afraid of those atrocities. How many so-called terrorists are acting out of fear or persecution? One of the biggest recruitment tools for terrorism is watching oppression, tyranny, and death around you. A hard lesson that shows we need to approach conflict with a tactical compassion and not force, fear, and blunt mentalities. Joker is usually more juxtaposed to Batman than his own character, though the Joaquin Phoenix movie was an excellent critique of modern attitudes towards poverty and individualism. Who hasn't felt lost and forgotten in a cruel world like Arthur Fleck? I see less Lex Luthor standing, but that's because we don't see Elon Musk, Bezos, and the rest of the ownership class as Lex. We'd rather see Tony Stark or Bruce Wayne. But the reality is, Musk, Bezos, Zuckerberg, almost every celebrity, popular musician, and all of the old money millionaires and billionaires smart enough to stay out of the limelight, all started wealthy, and they have the Luthor ego. Think about it. Very few working class people have time to do anything but engage in the day-to-day drudgery. Only the wealthy and extremely lucky can find that level of success. Without support, our social species fails. That's the big lie of individualism. Voldemort is a reflection of the bigotry in humanity. If one demographic, race, sexuality, gender, one person doesn't have freedom, then we don't live in a free society. We cannot pick and choose liberty. It must be universal. Voldemort's whole get-down is a fear of his own muggle blood. The irony being J.K. Rowling put a ton of racist crap in her books, including an Irish character prone to blowing things up, an Asian stereotype, and of course her disgust of trans people. Villains are often reflections of our fears, the parts of ourselves we reject. Often that rejection creates a larger shadow. This leads to bigger problems. And Darth Vader, Imperialism Manifest. Lucas saw the proxy war that was the Vietnam conflict and loosely based our plucky heroes on this. Fascism is addictive. The Sith are obsessed with power and control. When we can't find solutions to problems and apathy is standard, it can feel good and seem like an easy solution to do things through dictatorship rather than slow, long-term solutions that require far less violence. It's no wonder why people want to idolize Vader and the Sith. Who hasn't wanted to force choke some jackass from across the room? We see a pattern here. That which society rejects, the qualities that the status quo deem bad and good. But, as we've seen, it's never that simple. Often, criminals have undiagnosed or ignored issues. Terrorists are products of political and ideological turmoil, and often authorities cause more of the issues they believe they're trying to prevent. I didn't even mention that the U.S. serial killers with the highest body counts went after vulnerable populations, sex workers and women of color, demographics often ignored by law enforcement. We the people are treated like numbers, factors in a spreadsheet. It's no wonder why villains are growing in popularity, why the protagonists often get sympathetic stories. People are becoming complacent, fed up. We might have different solutions, but we're all fed up. We need to be active, demand better, and discuss uncomfortable concepts. Question everything. Organize. Maybe start a community improvement project, or better yet, unionize. Discussion is integral to democracy. Without the flow of ideas, democracy dies. Without questioning the status quo, we will not improve. Look for local groups. And look up local laws regarding what you're allowed to do. You'll probably find laws written and demanded by Karens. If we do nothing, the Karens win. That's democracy. That's Aquitaine.